When the last moon is cast over the last star of morning, and the future has passed without even a last desperate warning, then look into the sky where through the clouds a path is torn.
Welcome once more to another webcast of Alexandra Mayers Live.
Last unicorn.
You know, I did promise many of you a few webcasts ago a list as to why you may want to date a star or an ex-escort or an ex-sex worker. Because some of you might not think that you ever want to, but I think quite a few of you, men and women, don't have my perspective. So I'm going to share that with you right now. But before I do share this list, I do want to make it known that I don't think the majority of people on this planet are good enough to date ex-sex workers, ex-escorts, or ex-porn stars. And I'm not saying that to be mean, and I'm not saying that to be an elitist, not in any way, shape, or form, but there's reasons why I think this. So here we go. A few reasons why you may want to date an ex-porn star or ex-escort or ex-sex worker, male or female. They're basically an einhorn or unicorn. We're told that unicorns don't exist, but they do. It's just not everybody is meant to see them. But if you manage to meet an ex-sex worker, you basically have seen a unicorn. Okay? Ex-sex workers know the reality and truth of many unseen areas of society. In other words, the dark side. And I want to expand on that a little bit. Regardless of what arena you work in as an ex-sex worker, you are privy to seeing and learning about elements of society that the general populace never notices and never even interacts with. So that right there, I think, makes anyone who's an ex-sex worker an extraordinary person, because it basically means that they're a very knowledgeable person. An ex-sex worker is a survivor, because it's hard as hell to survive within the sex industry, but it's even more difficult to get away from them because they don't want to let you go. And if you can manage to get yourself away from the adult entertainment industry and live to talk about it, share what you know with others, and you don't even have to take that third step. But if you manage to survive that world, I mean, all you got to do is go to Google and type in porn star death, and you'll see the frequency and the relatively short lifespan of many sex workers, current or ex. So if you manage to meet a ex-sex worker, you've also met an incredibly strong survivor. An ex-sex worker is very strong-willed. Now, somebody with a weak personality, I suppose, who's looking to dominate somebody, they might not like that particular quality, but Such a person most likely does not deserve to date an ex-sex worker. An ex-sex worker has a sense of self-worth because choosing not to make money off your looks or sexuality is quite the feat in itself. An ex-sex worker loves themselves. An ex-sex worker is a fighter. An ex-sex worker generally has great genetics. Because if you survive that world and you look good enough to have been promoted within it, you're probably, you probably do have a genetic advantage. An ex-sex worker generally will not be with you for the money. And I do want to expand on that a little bit too. An ex-sex worker who is completely psychologically healthy, along with being physically healthy, has realized that in this lifetime, money ain't shit. So if you meet an ex-sex worker and you find that they are with you strictly for money, they're not really an ex-sex worker. I actually consider women who marry for money to be sex workers, whether they've ever officially been a sex worker or not, because they're working to keep that marriage going. Ex-sex workers generally know what they like and what they don't like sexually. And that right there can be such an advantage in a relationship. So many relationships that I've heard of, or that people have just told me about, break up simply because one or both of the parties in the relationship doesn't know what it is that they want, what it is that they like sexually. So being with an ex-sex worker, you get to bypass that arena. Not always, but typically you do. Now, this one's going to sound odd to many of you, but it's true. Ex-sex workers are likely more honest than people who have never been sex workers. Let's see, what else do I have on here? Ex-sex workers understand the value of $1 more so than most people. They know that the value is nothing. I guess I'll end, well, no, I won't end with this one, but this is a good one. If an ex-sex worker still has been able to maintain a decent relationship with their immediate family or even their extended family, then you know that that individual comes from a beautiful, understanding, compassionate, non-judgmental, and strong family. A family that you might not be good enough for. So that's just something to think about. Ex-sex workers generally care a lot about their health and fitness, oftentimes more so than the average civilian who's never been a sex worker. Anything else on here that I wrote that I thought was imperative? I'll end with these last two. Ex-sex workers tend to be more empathetic and more intuitive than most people. That could be a very unnerving or uncomfortable quality for some of you out there who think you might want to date a sex worker, because once you've worked with the public in such an intimate capacity for a long amount of time, you do develop a sort of a sixth sense, an ability to read people, whether you naturally are empathetic and intuitive or not. Typically, a sex worker can spot a liar a mile away. So if you are someone who's dishonest or a liar, then you're not good enough for an ex-sex worker. And lastly, ex-sex workers are incredibly independent thinkers. They were independent thinkers when they decided to take the leap and go in. They were independent thinkers when they realized, shit, this is not a bunch of renegades who are rebels without a cause. It's a bunch of weak pieces of shit who walk around with a gang mentality and who can't think for themselves. And that's what makes an ex-sex worker. Someone who thinks for themselves and has enough independent thought to say to themselves, you know what? This is killing me. Let me walk away. So that's my list in regards to a few reasons as to why you may want to date an ex-porn star, ex-escort, or ex-sex worker, or why you may not. So hope you all enjoyed that. Oh, well, you know what? There is one more reason why you may want to date an ex-sex worker. Because Jesus Christ, according to the Bible, did. Can't forget about Mary Magdalene.